the Farmland Exchange, the official podcast of CLHbid.com. Expert insights on buying and selling farmland in Western Canada.
Welcome to the Farmland Exchange, the official podcast of CLHbid.com, where we provide you with expert insights into the process of buying and selling farmland here in Western Canada. I'm Devon Davidson, your host and digital media strategist for CLHbid.com. If you haven't already, please take a minute to like, rate, and review the show on your podcast platform of choice. It helps us out, and we would greatly appreciate it. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about a sales method that is increasingly being discussed in farmland transactions, progressive tender. And here to help me with that conversation is CEO of CLHbid.com, Roy Carter. Roy, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks, Devon.
And also our COO, Ryan Lang. Ryan, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Devon.
Ready to roll again?
Ready for another one. Let's go.
All right. So let's start the conversation off, guys, by setting the table. And what is progressive tender?
Yeah, I guess, it's the term progressive tender. Different people use different terms. It's basically bid shopping, for lack of a better word in our mind. It's getting people to tender, and then after the tenders are in, starting to call around and see if they'll move. Mm-hmm. And, we call it bid shopping, which has been around forever. Most people see it as, dirty, that you're kind of negotiating or bidding against yourself in that.
Right.
But it's really come about, in the last 4 or 5 years, you probably see.
Yeah.
What's happened is, I think what's happened is the realtors see that, different price discovery forms are taking over for farmland.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that the reason for that is because farmland's so different than urban setting.
Right.
So it's like, wow, let's get into the space. So why don't we just do a tender, get them, and then start calling around? Well, that's been around for 100 years, right? Mm-hmm. That's why tender to a law firm doesn't work. People don't trust it. They don't engage, etc. But there's no way that it's turned over to some third party, or it's not turned over to programmers to devise a system to take people out of it. People are in it more than ever.
Right. And
anytime you engage people behind closed doors, that's problematic because people don't trust it then.
So who cares about the process typically, Roy? Is it always realtors? Law firms are doing it?
The trend started with realtors because single tender to a law firm's been around for hundreds of years.
Right.
And then tender was something you never heard of with real estate. Mm-hmm. But I think they saw the traction in farmland. And then it was like, we need to get in that space. And so realtors sort of trended there 4 or 5 years ago. But you do see the odd law firm doing it as well. Okay. Which maybe they did before behind closed doors. Well, we know they did, kind of bid shopping, calling and that.
Yep.
But now it's more out there. They actually say, what used to be hidden is now sort of they've unveiled that it's still just as greasy in that as ever. Mm-hmm. But they've sort of taken the cover off. And but definitely, the odd law firm does it. But definitely, realtors, I would say, try and have the majority of the space.
Yeah, I'd say too, even as the public's become more aware of, these new ways to sell land or these innovative ways to sell land, I think people have even taken it upon themselves to try and carry out their own sort of tender.
Progressive tender.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. And I mean, that to me, that carries a lot of risk.
For sure.
It's a little bit different when there's a law firm or a realtor trying to do it. But I mean, when you start, you've been farming all your life and farming, and then you try to dip your toe into the water and try to do your own ongoing or progressive tender, my gosh, watch out or be careful.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think it's appealing to realtors, or some of these people try to do it themselves, Ryan, because they're attempting to maximize value, or because it allows them to maybe control the process? Like, what's the appeal there, do you think?
Well, I mean, like Roy kind of spoke to earlier, it is an attempt. They obviously see what we're doing. Auction has kind of become popular as well. So, they see it as a way to move away from list, right? Of course, there's issues with list, and I think they're trying to, in one way, provide sellers or their sellers with an opportunity, to consider to maximize value. You know, I guess on the other side of it, you know, there's a lot of issues. Maybe we'll get into this later. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
No,
but
go for it.
I mean, you know, they really open themselves up to a lot of issues with the way they're carrying out these ongoing or progressive tenders. You know, one of those being, you know, collusion. You really open things up because, you know, people like to talk.
Sure they do.
You know, as a law firm here, obviously there's solicitor-client privilege. People like to talk. Usually, you know, a guy's been thinking about it for a while selling, and maybe they've decided to go down this route. Yeah, you know, you maybe have had conversations back and forth with him, or depending on, you know, how good your relationship, where is the value, where, you know, what's my number type thing. And, you know, once guys become aware of that and that gets out, I mean, you're going to have neighbors that are going to say, hey, you know what, I don't want this parcel. I'm going to back off here. I'll give you an opportunity to go here. And, you know, it doesn't lead to price discovery in the end, and it doesn't maximize value, right? So
Totally. Good points, Ryan. I know, you know, the first night of it, and this process goes on for up to a month sometimes.
Right.
You know, I've talked to people that have played for a while and then just say, screw it. But, you know, the first night, these guys don't watch hockey. They're calling around to see who's on and who's high and what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And I know one good example where they went to bed together and bought. It's like, you know, we'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
But one of us is just going to buy, and then we'll figure out the split.
Interesting.
And that's it for the owner. You know, they start backing away and get tired of it. You better watch that, right? Because if you're on an exit, you can really get hurt, right?
Is that another draw for what we do at CLH is the shortened time frame, the fact that it only takes place over the course of an hour or two as opposed to a month? Like, obviously, there's more risk for collusion and communication if you're doing this over a period of weeks and months. But does that 1 hour time frame make price discovery more effective?
yeah, you know, we believe so, and you know, over the last 10 years, obviously, you know, we've heard what sellers and buyers, you know, appreciate in the process. One of those things was, you know, let's tighten it up because, you know what, we got things to do. You know, we could be out in the land depending on what time of the year the sale is, things like that. So the 1 hour time slot, you know, a lot of the feedback we've got is that 1 hour works well. People generally have a number in mind when they you know, come to the table and want to place bids. You know, and once that price is affirmed, I mean, everything goes from there, right?
Yeah, I know. Good point. I mean, we're really a function of what didn't work.
Yeah.
And one was collusion, especially at auctions. You know, and I'm sort of dating myself here, but I've stood in farmyards where, you know, all the neighbors are within 20 feet of each other, right? Holding babies or whatever. And relationships are lost and people don't put up their hands. And you ask people why you didn't bid, and it's because Joe was bidding.
Right.
And, you know, and then you take that to the theaters at bigger sales and you can see the stands, guys talking, sitting beside each other. So, you know, it was to combat collusion in that 2-minute reset. You know, we don't show who's on. They don't know who's on. That fuse is running pretty tight.
Yeah.
But start doing this bid shopping with real estate, and these guys got all night to talk. And believe me, they figure it out.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, well, then if it's not you on, it's so-and-so on. And they just reverse engineer to figure out who's on. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, they get more solid as it goes. And they end up sort of controlling the show as opposed to the vendor, right?
Right.
Our whole goal is put the pressure on the buyers, short fuse, don't let them collude. And, you know, even our on block trumps any collusion. Mm-hmm. But it really compounds, like Ryan says, it really compounds the collusion. You know, I think one of the big things they don't realize, they think we just sell farmland, right? Like a house in town, like it's one-dimensional.
Right.
So all we got to do is, you know, just bid shop and we'll get it. What they don't realize is, you know, we go there, devise a sale plan. It might be 5-6 years, tax, packaging, you know, getting it right. Yeah. And they just think, okay, this is, so they don't understand the layers to what we do. Mm-hmm. It'd be similar. We've talked about the ophthalmologist.
Yeah.
It'd be similar to the optometrist thinking, those ophthalmologists are getting busy. Those guys that have went to school for 20 years are a doctor and all that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just start doing this. Well, they don't even know what he does.
Right.
And they can't legally do it. So they're kind of trying to play in a sandbox that...
They're not equipped to play.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think the biggest takeaway there is we're not one-dimensional, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Is there any more trust in the process when it's carried out by a law firm? Like, you said it's more realtors doing progressive tender, but is there more trust in that process, or do buyers still just view it for what it is?
I think the reason tender ended up at a law firm to start with because of that stakeholder idea and get it away from the owner himself. And kind of what we talked about in another podcast, probably that last guy you should actually trust on the value of land is the guy that owned it. Get it away from him, put it in some sort of professional third party. But it's problems like we've talked about in other podcasts. Giving it to a realtor, to me, the owner might as well do it. I don't think there's any more confidence getting a call from a realtor at 7 p.m. to say, "Hey, Joe, are you moving?"
Yeah.
Than if the owner called. They know that it's all being bid shopped, and so I don't see it. There's no comfort there.
Okay. Ryan, how do you think the buyers perceive that process? Like, do they keep participating for fear of missing out, or they eventually get burned once or twice and they're just kind of out?
I think everyone approaches a progressive tender, just like a sealed tender to a law firm. I mean, everyone's cautious. There's a curtain that you can't see behind, and like we alluded to earlier, you don't exactly know what's going on behind closed doors. So, I mean, from a buyer's standpoint, I always try to put myself in both the seller and buyer shoes, depending on what we're looking at or considering. And I mean, if I put myself in those shoes, would I feel comfortable with the process? I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be 100% confident in the process. And like Roy alluded to earlier, the reason we started was to address a lot of those shortcomings with systems like that.
Are there any differences, whether it's carried out between a law firm or a realtor, or is it just it's same process, different shop?
Pretty much the same. I've seen law firms go on for days as well.
Yeah.
I probably haven't heard the month scenario that I've heard with some real estate firms, but it's pretty much the same. Bid shopping is bid shopping. And, it's calling around and trying to shorten that list and see who will move.
Roy, some of the progressive tenders have a seller's ask price attached with a proviso that if the ask is not met, the high bidder will be called. Can you talk about that a little bit and how it works?
Yeah, and I mean, some of them advertise by doing that, the seller sets the price. Well, in whose world who's going to believe that, where the seller sets the price? That doesn't exist.
Doesn't work, yeah.
Property's worth what the highest bidder's willing to pay for it.
That's right.
So, when they say you're high, and then they call you, and they say, you're the highest person in the world on this. Nobody's willing to go higher. But are you stupid enough to go higher? I mean, what would you do? I mean, really?
Yeah.
That's it, man. There's nobody higher. Where are you going? And try and flush that one out. I mean, the average farmer's smarter than that. I always get intrigued. I know some of you guys are heading to the egg show tomorrow in Grand Prairie. I always get intrigued with these farmers. These financial planners will be at the egg shows. And definitely there's good financial planners, but, some of them show up in their 15 or 20-year-old car, set up a booth, and they purport to sit there and give advice to these big farmers that are, big. This is big business, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's kind of, you got to scratch your head that these guys are running a bigger show than you ever dreamt of.
Yeah.
And that's where, they get a call from a realtor and it's like, yeah, like we've rung you out. There's nobody else there, but you want to keep going? Yeah, it's probably not, right? I'm not going to shoot myself in the head, right?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, Ryan, one thing we wanted to cover here was tender by auction, and it's something that we've seen a little bit in the marketplace. How does that differ from progressive tender and from what CLHbid does? And are there differences in the packaging of the land as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen and we've heard from people obviously at trade shows. That's a question that does get brought up to us, and to me, the way I look at it is tender and auction, two different things, right?
Yeah.
The way I see it, when I hear tender by auction, I just think progressive tender or ongoing tender,
Right.
Tender by auction, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah. We can just make up words and call it things, sure.
Well, yeah. So to me, that's a progressive tender system. With that being said, if you watch that system, bidders, how many people you're bidding against, and there's usually a bidder identification number.
Okay.
Right. So I mean, is it tender where people are supposed to remain anonymous? I don't think so, right?
Not necessarily.
So, I don't know. It's a hybrid system. When it comes to parceling and things like that, what we see on a lot of those platforms, I guess if you want to call it that, we see a lot of it go up as one parcel. Whereas, CLHbid, for example, we take a look at things, and when it comes to parceling, we're obviously putting things strategically together to maximize value for the sellers. That's the whole goal at the end of the day is to maximize value, right, for our sellers. So parceling is important. That's obviously one of the things that we offer and we do take a look at. Coming from farming backgrounds, we understand, how things should generally fit together, or how we're going to fit the pieces together, right?
Yeah.
Just based on, land utilization and things like that, whether you're grazing cattle or, planting crops, things like that. Yeah.
No, good points. Another point, I think, if the farmer is getting, the realtor to do it or they're working together, that's a one-shot deal for them, right? They don't have to worry. I don't think they worry about credibility so much.
No.
It's like a one-shot deal, and it's a different deal than, CLHbid. We sell hundreds and hundreds of farms. Credibility and what you did on your last sale and the last few hundred are everything. So it's not a case of, okay, let's sell our morals, let's compromise here, let's let a guy bid back or whatever. We've had those questions. And if you were doing a one-shot deal, we've been asked, let me bid, and if I end up getting caught high, I'll pay you half your commission. And it was like, no. And their answer is like, well, it's a big number. And it's like, no, it's our credibility, right? But what happens is on these, a realtor might do one progressive tender a year or maybe one every 3 years. But it's him and the farmer, and I don't think the rules are the same.
Yeah.
Because they're, it's a one-shot deal, and we want to get this money, and sometimes they let their guard down on ethics. Even the jury's out on bid shopping if it's legal or not. Courts have said there's a duty if you're tendering to treat people fairly. And definitely people tendering have been sued over it and got judgments against them.
Right.
And the court hasn't really clarified if just bid shopping allows you to get tagged, but from what I see, bid shopping, that's not treating people fairly in certain cases. There's people don't get the phone call. It may well be the guy that was high. The other guys get phone calls and he's left off because the guy doesn't like him, right? So it's a totally different game. And as soon as you allow people to take over behind closed doors, you lose trust. Whereas in our situation, when we have a sale, it's hands off. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have no control. We have our own in-house programmers, and it's all, computing generated. There is nobody has to talk. It's done. And if you're high, and you get a notice, right?
Yeah. Hard to prove that though too, Roy, right? When there's bid shopping or collusion, that if the courts are saying there has to be a fair process to everyone that's on, really hard to prove that in the end.
Oh yeah, no, it is. You need to take one of the paralegals for lunch or drinks or something and what really went on there, right? But Yeah, is there leaks sometimes? Totally. And do we know what's happened? Totally, right?
Yeah.
But generally, they're not too worried about it. It's a one-shot deal, and it's okay, let's keep it to ourselves, and let's jam some people here over the next month, right?
Yeah. The other thing I want to talk about here too, Ryan, was marketing, how we differ in our marketing and how Progressive Tender approaches that. So I think, would you say that Progressive Tender is generally a local or a regional approach?
Yeah, I mean that's often what we see, and same with law firms who are trying to wade in those waters as well. That again is very regional, and you know, if you've seen, you know, happen to come across an advertisement from one of those agencies, it's very minimal.
Yeah.
I mean, you might see it once on Instagram or things like that. Whereas, you know, we're of the vision or the view that, you know, you have one opportunity, you know, to sell a lifetimes of work, right?
Yeah.
You want to get it right, and we understand that. And a part of getting it right is, you know, reaching all potential interested parties that may be interested in acquiring said parcels, right? So, I mean, we invest a lot into the marketing side of our campaigns, and we believe it does return value in the end for our sellers that we work with. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had lots of positive feedback, hey, Roy. I just know you'll pass along some of those comments every once in a while from the sellers, and generally they're quite happy with the approach we've taken.
Yeah, I would say more than generally. 98%. Yeah, it's people are shocked by the effort but we've got the right team, and you bet.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not just regional, as many people know, right? I mean, we're right through Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC.
Yeah.
You know, when I talk to people, a lot of the common theme that I hear is, "Oh, I've seen your vans, right? We've got 50 vans across
all the time,
across Western Canada." So that I mean, it does draw a lot of attention. I mean, obviously, doing what we do here over the last 10 years, we've built a brand that people recognize and trust, right? So.
It's fair to say that sort of reach and marketing power is really helpful for specific sales too. Like if we have something where there might be appeal to buyers across Western Canada or internationally.
Yeah, totally. You know, not the one quarter type deal. Obviously, internationally is, you know, we got foreign ownership, except for BC.
Yeah.
But for sure, especially the bigger blocks, you know, where people are looking to set up a son or daughter or something.
Yeah.
And they'll take equity out of high-priced land or pivot land or irrigated stuff and set them up so the borders are gone. So definitely that's totally changed. Moving cattle prices, they'll move right across Western Canada.
Yeah.
It's a game changer there. And yeah, the farm deal where the old newspaper and the buyer was within 15 miles, long gone are those days.
Yeah, and I bring it up too because I think that we're equipped to deal with a range of sales, right? Whether it is the single quarter, as you said, or if it is, you know, 30 quarters or a large ranch in BC.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
All right, guys. Anything else you want to cover for Progressive Tender?
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Okay, fair enough. Ryan, anything else?
No, well said.
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys, for your time today. Really appreciate it. It was a good show.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Devon.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate you supporting the show. As I mentioned at the top, if you haven't already, take a minute to leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Helps us out, and we do appreciate it. If you have questions or there's topics you'd like us to cover, send us an email, info@CLHbid.com, or give us a phone call at 866-263-7480. If you are interested in selling farmland as well, we'd love to have that conversation with you. That's going to do it for now. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this has been a positive exchange for you. Take care.